Have you ever thought about what happens when the gas needle hits empty in the wrong place, at the wrong time? Most of us think it's just an inconvenience, a delay, a call to roadside assistance, maybe an embarrassing walk to the nearest station. But out there, in the dead of night, on empty highways and back roads, running out of gas can mean something far darker. Because when your car stops, you're no longer moving fast. You're no longer safe. You're stranded, a perfect target for whoever or whatever is already watching. These are three true stories of people who ran out of gas and came face to face with something far worse than an empty tank. This happened back in 2005. I was 18 and living in Uvalde, Texas, a very low-income rural neighborhood. The closest city was San Antonio. I was attending the local community college because that's all my parents could afford. One of my best friends from high school, Andrew, had moved to San Antonio to go to San Antonio College. He lived in a small apartment just outside the city with a roommate, and his girlfriend often stayed with him. Since the city was only about an hour and a half away, I visited him all the time. One weekend, he invited me to crash at his place, so I took my trusty old 1995 pickup truck, though honestly it was a piece of junk. The gas gauge didn't work. I had to track when I last filled the tank and reset the trip mileage. I took Route 90, a straight shot from Uvalde to San Antonio, leaving around 3 p.m. on a Friday. There was no traffic, and I arrived at a reasonable time. That night we went out. We stopped at a liquor store, drank in the apartment with his roommate. Then the three of us went to a dive bar that usually looked the other way, about fake IDs. We got back to the apartment around 2 a.m., grabbed food, and I slept on the couch. The next day was awkward. Andrew and his girlfriend argued all day, and by evening it got worse. I didn't drink much that day because I felt uncomfortable staying the night while they were fighting, so I decided to head home. I said goodbye and started the drive back late that night, around midnight, I think. Route 90 was deserted, and I was driving fast for a pickup. Suddenly, the engine started sputtering. My heart dropped. I had forgotten to fill the tank. I slowed, but it was too late. The engine died and I coasted to the shoulder. I tried to start it a few times, but nothing happened. My cell phone was as unreliable as my truck. No signal. I turned on my hazards and hoped a good Samaritan would pass. I sat there for what felt like forever. Headlights finally appeared, but the car zoomed past. This happened again. I started thinking I might just sleep in the car and wait for sunrise. I shut off the ignition, angled the seat back, and began to drift. Then a car door closed behind me. I looked in the rear view and saw a large pickup pull up behind my truck with its headlights off. At first, I thought someone had stopped to help. I got out and walked over, but there was no one inside the truck and no one outside. I went back to my car and locked the door. Then someone tapped my window. A tall man was leaning down, smiling. "Hey buddy, need a hand?" he said. I lowered the window a crack and told him I'd run out of gas. He said, "Now that's quite the predicament. Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." I thought he meant helping with a gas can, so I got out and shut my door, expecting him to lead me to his truck. Instead, he looked down at me and said, "I need you to empty your pockets, please." It took a second to process. I was a broke college kid. I wasn't giving him my phone and what little cash I had. I turned and ran toward the trees. He chased me. I zigzagged through the woods until I lost him, then crouched behind a big tree to catch my breath. I heard him coming closer. I held my breath and heard him say, loud enough for me to hear, "I'll kill you, you piece of..." Then his footsteps moved away. I stayed behind that tree the rest of the night, too scared to move, eventually just lying there until dawn. When daylight came, I went back to the highway. The pickup that had been behind me was gone, but my truck doors were open. My glove box had been ransacked and emptied of anything valuable. My flannel hoodie, the one with something in the pocket, was gone too. Eventually, a good Samaritan stopped and gave me a ride to the nearest gas station. I bought a fuel can, filled it, and the man drove me back so I could put gas in my truck. I topped it off at the station, then drove straight home. That night taught me a hard lesson. There are very bad people who will try to take advantage of you when you're vulnerable. But there are also good people, like the man who helped me. I was lucky to get away. When I was 18, I was immature and reckless on the road. I'd honk when I got impatient, cut people off, things I look back on now with regret. If I ever have kids, I'll be strict about their driving. At that age, though, I drove a lot. My school was 5 hours away from home, and I would often make the trip. Traffic near my hometown was always horrible, so I learned to drive at night. A trip that normally took 4 or 5 hours could be cut down to 3. This happened at the beginning of winter break, right after the semester ended. All my friends left during the day, but I waited until late at night to avoid traffic. I drove a beat-up Mazda 3 and was infamous for pushing the gas tank way past empty. I used to say it still had 30 miles left, even when the needle hit E. That night, I finally found out I was wrong. About an hour into the drive, the car jolted and sputtered. The engine was dying. I panicked, took the nearest exit, and hoped it led to a gas station. But the exit ramp was pitch dark. No streetlights, just endless woods. I sped through a stop sign and made a sharp turn onto another deserted road, praying the car wouldn't die completely. Eventually it did. I had no signal on my phone. T-Mobile is useless outside cities. And even 911 wouldn't go through. I turned on my hazards and waited. After a long, lonely stretch, headlights appeared. I flashed mine, and the car passed me, then made a U-turn and pulled up behind me on the grass. A man stepped out. I was terrified. I cracked my window and told him I'd run out of gas. He was bald, wore glasses, and looked somewhat trustworthy. He offered me a ride to a gas station. I had no other option, so I got in. His car was a black Honda, maybe a 2010, with a strange smell inside. We drove through endless woods while he chatted nonstop, asking where I was from, what school I went to. I told the truth. I was a college student heading home. He said not many out-of-towners pass through. Then I heard it, banging, thumping from the trunk. At first I thought it was loose tools or something rolling around, but then came the sound that froze my blood. A scream. Someone was screaming inside the trunk. I looked at him. He looked back at me. Without thinking, I unbuckled, threw the door open, and ran. He grabbed at me but missed. Instead of chasing, he slammed his passenger door shut and sped away. I ran into the nearest diner, shaking and screaming for help. The staff called 911. Police arrived quickly, given the seriousness of what I reported. A man driving with someone screaming in his trunk. They took every detail I could remember. His appearance, the car, where he picked me up. They drove me back to my car, helped me call AAA, and waited until I was safe. That night changed me forever. I still wonder if whoever was in that trunk survived. All I know is that I barely escaped what could have been the end of me. I live in Morganton, North Carolina, a quiet rural town in Burke County. Life here is usually peaceful, though you run into strange people now and then. One night after finishing a late nursing shift, I stopped for gas around 3 a.m. I was exhausted, hungry, and my phone was about to die. I bought $10 of gas and a packaged sandwich, which I ate inside the station's cafe. A man was there too, just staring at me, though he didn't buy anything. It made me uneasy. After eating, I filled up my car and left. Soon after, my gas gauge suddenly dropped to empty and the low fuel light came on. Confused, I pulled over. The smell of gasoline was strong. I called my husband and told him what happened. He suspected someone had cut my fuel line. I immediately thought of the man who was watching me at the gas station. My husband said he'd head out right away and call roadside assistance. Then as I sat on the roadside, a car with no headlights pulled up behind mine. My fear spiked. I grabbed my keys, turned off the ignition so my lights went dark, and ran. I sprinted toward the nearest house, down a long driveway, and banged on the door until a groggy older man answered. I begged to come inside to charge my phone. After explaining, he let me in and offered me water. But something was off. From where I sat in the living room, I could see his reflection in a mirror. In the kitchen, I watched him drop something into the glass of water before walking back toward me. My stomach turned. I thanked him but didn't drink it. He asked me to explain my situation again, then claimed he didn't have an iPhone charger since he used Android. At that moment, I decided I had to leave. I stood up, walked straight to the door and ran. Back outside, I crept along the roadside, hiding behind trees. My phone was at 1%, so I sent my location to my husband before it died. Minutes later, I saw his headlights and waved him down. He pulled over, and I collapsed into his arms, crying. When we went back to my car, the vehicle that had been behind me was gone, but my back window was shattered, and someone had clearly rummaged through the inside. The battery was dead, and the fuel line had indeed been cut. That night, I realized how close I came, not once but twice, to being another victim. I'll never forget the feeling of knowing that two different men had dangerous intentions for me, all in the span of a single night. Now think about it for a second. What if this happened to you? Imagine being stuck on an empty road in the middle of the night, your car out of gas, no one around to help, and then realizing you're not really alone. If you were in that place, what would you do? Would you run? Would you hide, or would you confront whatever was coming closer? Tell me in the comments, because I really want to know what you would have done.